Hi, this is Adam.
And Dave.
You're listening to Fiction.
Or fiction.
No.
Oh, nonfiction.
Bad Student. Cue music. Hey, this is...
Fiction or nonfiction.
Hey, this is the show where we look at viral news stories, we look at memes, we look at stuff that's out there in the ether and determine whether it's true or false, whether it happens to be fiction or...
Nonfiction.
And I said bad student, and do you know why?
Because I'm in trouble.
A little bit.
Uh-oh.
Why are you in trouble?
I don't know.
Misbehaving in class again?
The dog ate my homework.
Well, speaking of myths, that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, what are we talking about?
So, I was inspired by an episode that we did not too long ago about old wives' tales.
Oh, yes.
So, myths that kind of go out there into, the bigger world and people just assume they happen to be true. And I thought, where do a lot of these stories come from? Obviously, they come from parents, they come from family, but often a lot of these things are perpetuated by the people that we would expect most to give us accurate information, educators.
What about like recess, playground gossip?
Oh, that too as well. There's a lot of stuff you find out about in school that is just not true. And it isn't just educators. It's also fellow students, fellow pupils. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about 4 things that you probably learned in school that may not be true.
Okay, let's get started.
Yeah. So again, just for a little bit of preamble, there's lots of things that are taught as foundational ideas in primary education. Oftentimes, later on in life, we hold on to these beliefs and we tell them to our own children or to other family members. We say, of course, this has to be true. But sometimes it turns out that isn't correct. And that's for a number of different reasons. Maybe sometimes the science behind a concept changes, or maybe teachers were forced to simplify an idea in order to educate a young mind, or maybe it's even just some gossip on the schoolyard that isn't necessarily true. But regardless, we're going to figure out if some of these things taught in school are truth or a pedagogically perpetuated myth.
Okay.
That was difficult to say.
That was wordy.
Thank you.
Do you like words, Adam?
I might.
Okay, let's get started here.
Okay, well, I know you're in a rush. Sorry.
I'm not.
Recess is about to happen. Okay, so what is an example you can think of something that maybe you learned in school that turned out later in life not to be true?
Math.
You're wrong.
Calculus is a lie.
Okay, but what is
Unfortunately, no, it's not.
What is a big... Unfortunately.
I mean...
Sorry for our math head listeners
Fortunately,
out there.
It is not a lie. Calculus is real. It's the real deal. Okay, let's continue.
Okay, but what's I think a big example, one people reference all the time of something that we were taught, especially our generation as children, and then maybe during our adult life we found out or were told, oh, this is no longer true.
Maybe something to do with like the planets?
Is
solar
there one,
system?
Is there one specifically you can think of?
Is it called Pluto?
So how many planets were you told there existed in our solar system when you were in primary school?
I don't remember the exact number, but I know Pluto was one of them.
Okay, it was 9.
I was going to say 9.
A single-digit number.
I was going to say 9.
Sure you were.
9.
But that is no longer true. It is now considered to contain 8 planets. So Pluto is not a planet. After its discovery in 1930, it was taught in schools across the world that the celestial body was a planet because that's how it was classified at the time. But then something happened that engendered a lot of controversy. In 2006, that's when the International Astronomical Union reclassified Pluto as a dwarf.
Why?
Well, because it turned out the classification they had for it no longer met the specifications of being a planet.
Now, did they go to Pluto to test this?
Yes, they did, obviously. That's not true, folks. But with that said, many people, especially of our generation, still hold on to the belief that Pluto is a planet. And when you mention this, inevitably there's still somebody who goes, that can't be true. I learned that in school. And there's even people not of our generation, people who went to school who are much younger than us, who still hold on to this belief because their parents or their family members told them this because they were taught it in school, even though now it's no longer true.
Here's a thing that maybe we should bring up. At the time it was true, but things change. And sometimes new information comes in to light, and because of a study that was done.
Mm-hmm.
And things change, and that's okay, and that's science. We're learning. They can say, there's lots of things from maybe 100 years ago that they said were true in scientific ways that are not, because we've learned from studies and research.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is not an attack on the educational system.
No.
We want to make this very clear, that this is not us trying to say, don't listen to your teachers, kids, they don't know what they're talking about. This is us simply acknowledging that even into your adult age, you need to scrutinize the information that was considered foundational at some point. That's part of information literacy.
Yeah.
Look at sources, look at why you think things are the way they are, and then always keep in mind information might change depending on the science behind it.
Right. And we're not saying everything is a conspiracy and wrong. No. We're saying
No, that's another podcast.
Yeah. But we're saying that things change due to certain studies that have been done, and educated responses were formulated to get to this information. I'm sure when someone had this idea, they didn't just blurt out, okay, Pluto's fake. They didn't say that.
They didn't say Pluto doesn't exist.
No,
they just
no.
said the classification of it has changed.
And there's a reason why. They did these studies, and information literacy is important, because where is this source coming from? It wasn't just someone on the internet saying Pluto's fake.
Mm-hmm.
Don't believe Pluto.
And now with that said, we also want to emphasize the other side of this, which is just because you learn something, do not go on espousing that it's truth without really knowing it. Make sure you can still back it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through 4 core things that you were taught in school, and we're going to evaluate. We are definitely evaluating these to figure out if they still are true, or if perhaps the science has changed enough, or we've learned things to emphasize the fact that these might not be as true as you assume they are.
Yeah.
So Dave, you're going to be my student today.
Okay.
We're going to go through this point by point, 4 different points, and examine if they happen to be a fact or a myth, if they happen to be fiction or...
Nonfiction.
Very good, very good. So fact/myth, number 1, we're going to examine. I'm going to give you a statement, and you have to tell me if you think it's true or not.
Okay.
There are 3 states of matter.
This is a statement that is true. Oh, you want me to say if that statement is true?
You did the thing I did. Very clever, very clever.
There are 3 states of matter? I'd say no, not true.
Okay, so it's not true. So tell me why you think that.
I'm just guessing. I don't know why.
Like a very poor student.
I don't have any information to back it up. I'm just guessing that. I don't have any information. Tell me why it's true or not true.
Oh, okay, so...
And why people should get information to back up what they say.
Okay, so let's talk about states of matter. When I discuss a state of matter, what am I describing?
Atoms? I don't know.
You must have gotten an A in every science class.
I'm trying to... Just tell me.
Okay, so matter, the states of matter are basically how matter exists within the world. So how...
Liquids and...
Yeah, so basically how...
Solids and...
Yeah, how molecules form to
and
create...
igneous rock.
Yeah, to create different types of substance. So
Yes.
you've named a few. That's the 3 that I think most people would assume are the 3 states of matter.
Right. Like, okay, well, now I'm thinking that there are 3 states of matter. But anyways.
What are they?
Well, there's definitely liquids, solids, and gases.
Okay, so solid is something that can hold its own shape. The molecules are solid and closely packed together. Liquids, molecules have the ability to move around and slide past each other, and it can take the shape of whatever container holds it. In gases, the atoms are much more spread out, and the atoms collide randomly with one another, and gas can be compressed much more easily than a liquid or a solid. So those are basically the definitions of what these states of matter are. At this point, there is basically consensus agreeing that there are 5 states of matter.
Whoa.
Do you want to hear about the other 2?
Is it like a combination of gas and water?
Not really.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about the 2 that you may not be familiar with, and this information I did get from an article by Mary Bagley, which was published on livescience.com back on October 6th of 2023, titled Definition and Phases of Change. So there's plasma. So plasma should sound very familiar.
Well, we have plasma in our bodies.
Well, that's a different type of plasma.
Okay.
What do you normally watch that has plasma?
Ghostbusters has ectoplasma.
I think you're thinking of Ecto Cooler, that delicious green soft drink we had as children.
Oh, so tell me.
Plasma, like a plasma TV.
Oh, it's a gas.
Well, plasma is very similar to gas, but can carry an electrical charge. So this is the main difference of the state of matter. Gas cannot carry an electrical charge. Plasma is a form of matter that exists when the atoms are in such an excited state that they jump an energy level up, and in doing so give off light and the ability to conduct electricity.
Oh, so that's what happened after my burrito.
Well, after you put it in the microwave with the tinfoil, yes. No, but basically on Earth, plasmas are commonly found in some types of fluorescent lights, by example. That's how they function. And also during storms, as we see lightning, that is plasma.
Okay.
This is going to be a fun one to say. The fifth state of matter, the Bose-Einstein condensate.
I don't want to say that.
Well, we're just going to abbreviate it to BEC, and that's where most scientists give it an acronym for.
BEC?
BEC, or the Beck, but I'm going to call it the BEC.
BEC, yeah.
So there is a temperature at which molecular motion stops. Now, this is called absolute zero. Just a fraction above this temperature, and for only some elements, BEC occurs. That's when the atoms start behaving like little waves as opposed to particles and start overlapping one another until they eventually act like one wave, essentially becoming a type of giant superatom. This is not a common occurrence, but when it does, it defies all other definitions of matter. So this becomes its own unique fifth state of matter.
Interesting.
So beyond these different states, it's important to understand that matter can change states. The common example you probably can think of right away is water either freezing to a solid for ice or evaporating, becoming a gas as it becomes water vapor. But also these changes allow for certain technological advances and common day luxury items. So for example, in plasma TVs, little pockets of gas are excited with electricity and they produce the light that we end up seeing that creates the images on the television. So likewise, if you supercool a gas, you get a BEC superatom wave.
Is this a superatom episode?
Oh, so far it is, I hope.
Just a side question. I don't believe they develop and sell plasma TVs anymore. I think they've switched over to LEDs.
Now, it's not fully common. There are still plasma TVs on the market, but that is simply because with the state of ions and electrons that are released from it, oftentimes there can be screen distortion, and
the image can get burned on there.
Exactly, which is why it's not as common anymore. But that is, you could be annoyed that you're watching an episode of Becker and all of a sudden
Ted Danson's on there forever.
Yeah, he's on there forever. Well, I would be so grateful to see that, but no,
even when you watch like football, you're like, oh, why is Ted Danson here?
Because it's a wonderful phenomena of this great state of matter. It's the plasma. Now, the question is now, why the lie? Why do people think that there's only 3 states of matter? What do you think?
Well, I think maybe because that is what has been taught for such a long time in school. And those, I guess, are the main ones. The main matters.
The main matters that matter?
That matter. Because the other ones are less common.
I'm going to say technically yes.
Yeah.
So you have to think about it. When you're educating children about states of matter, solids, liquids, gases, there are always corollaries to things that children can understand.
Mm-hmm.
You can show them something solid. You can show them something liquid. You can show them something gaseous.
Yeah.
But how do you demonstrate plasma, or how do you demonstrate even BEC? A BEC can't even be seen without certain types of technology. So at this time, curriculum is very carefully worded, and I do appreciate this, where you're going to notice this if you look at like a young nephew's or niece's schoolwork. It states that there are 3 states of matter, and these 3 states of matter are introduced to these young minds. Mm-hmm. However, it states solids, gases, and liquids are 3 states of matter. It doesn't say they're the 3 states of matter. Mm-hmm. So it's actually very carefully worded in Common Canadian curriculum to not make it exclusive.
And that makes sense. And also maybe it's something, if you're learning like at a young age, especially like in grade school, you need a little bit more understanding of things to maybe even comprehend what you just said.
Exactly.
So maybe it's something that's introduced in high school.
When we talked about foundational concepts, what we mean by that is in order to understand a higher level concept, you need to have a base, or you need to have some sort of foundation to build upon.
Right. Yeah.
So without the idea of these three concepts of matter, you can't build upon that to understand about the other two, the BEC and plasma. So with that said, this is a myth. There are indeed 5 states of matter, and we don't know what will happen in the future. Maybe scientists, through different studies, will discover yet another state. But at this time, there is concurrence that there are 5 states of matter.
Okay.
So, speaking of 5, here is your next fact/myth, and I need you to tell me if this is true or not.
But is this the 3rd fact or the 4th fact?
This is second.
We're only on 2.
Wow, you're also really good at counting, Dave.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I chose the best pupil here. Humans have 5 senses. You can't see, but he's counting on his fingers.
Counting is a sense. No, I'm going to say yes.
So you're going to say we're limited to 5 senses. What are those senses?
Well, there's sight,
Mm-hmm.
sound.
Mm-hmm. Or hearing. You could say hearing.
Hearing, taste,
Taste.
touch.
Okay.
How many is that? 5?
That's 4.
There's one more. Smelling. Wait.
Yes, smelling stuff.
There's one more. Smelling.
Yeah.
Smells. All the smells.
Yes, all the smells. So, okay, yeah, those are the 5. So the ability to see, the ability to hear, the ability to feel in terms of tactile sensation on your skin, the ability to smell, and the ability to taste.
You know, if I knew there was going to be a test today, I wouldn't have shown up.
I actually said there would be a test.
Oh, okay. I wasn't listening.
You were a great student. Anyway, with that said, there's been much discourse about human beings having a 6th sense. You've probably heard that term before, and usually this is equated to some sort of extrasensory perception or psychic abilities.
Like your spidey sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to say is, at this point, the idea that humans have 5 senses is a myth.
Okay. Why?
I'm going to tell you. Sourced from an article from the World Economic Forum that was published in 2017 by Alex Gray. The title of the article is Humans Have More Than 5 Senses. So when someone hears this, maybe initially they're going to think, yes, he's going to say psychic abilities are a thing, people have it. And no, you don't need to get into the realm of science fiction or fantasy to say people have more than 5 senses. Actually, at this point, there is debate about the exact number of sensory devices and abilities people have, but I'm going to name a couple obvious ones that you might be surprised and think, oh, how have I never considered that before?
ESP.
ESPN?
No. ESP is a sense, maybe. No? Okay.
So I also apologize. These are new words for me, so I might butcher them a little bit. Equilibrioception.
And what is that?
So this is your sense of balance.
Oh, I don't have that.
So, well, I have seen you walk. But, the term should sound familiar for those who have heard of the word equilibrium.
Why don't they just call it equilibrious?
Well, because you're definitely not equilibrious. But with that said, Dave might actually only have 5 senses as I go through this.
Wow, thanks.
No, but joking aside, David, this is your sense of balance. So it's what keeps you upright and helps us make our way around the world without getting hurt. So while most people are familiar with the concept of humans containing equilibrium, it's not commonly thought of as a sense, but it's something that we actually have a sensory organ within our ear that provides us a degree of equilibrium that gives us our sense of balance in the world that helps us navigate through. So, yeah, that is a sense.
Okay, what's the next one?
So the next one is proprioception.
Okay.
Any idea what that could be?
This has to do with visions.
Not quite.
Okay.
So this is knowing which parts of your body are without looking. So it's how we can type without looking at the keyboard, or, chop a vegetable without necessarily looking at where the blade is going.
Or memorize something?
Or, well, not at all.
Okay.
Or walk around without having to watch our feet, something that I know, again, with your lack of equilibrium, you're not used to.
What?
Do you look at your feet all the time when you walk?
Chewing gum and walking at the same time. That's definitely one, right? Is that... Anyways, continue.
Well, I'm getting a sense of your identity right now. I'll
Ha!
say that.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that is another sense. Again, it is attuned to certain sensory organs within our body, and it's not necessarily relegated to any of the traditionally held five senses. This is a unique sense that we have.
Do you think it's kind of like, when you're trying to measure something and you have the level, and then it's like when you're at the right point, the little bubble goes in the middle. That's what we have in our bodies.
Technically, that is for equilibrioception. So yes, that
the last one, yes.
Not proprioception.
No, this one you just need glasses. Yeah.
Going on, we have another one I want to bring up. It's kinesthesia.
Okay.
So that's our sense of movement. This is a little bit different than proprioception because this is separate from the tactile sensation of us feeling an object outside of our body. This is feeling the motion and movement of our bodies through sensory organs in our muscles and joints. So for example, it allows us to feel when we're lifting our arm or bending a knee.
Lifting with your back.
Actually, that is true.
Yeah, don't lift with your back.
No.
Yeah.
Always lift with your knees.
Yeah.
And you will feel that through kinesthesia. So yes, that is another sense. And again, that is a separate sensory organ than the five that are depicted traditionally. And then one final one I'll give as an example, chronoception.
Okay.
It sounds like a great RPG, but it's not. What is it?
I have no idea.
Think about the term chrono.
It has to do with chromosomes?
It has to do with the passing of time.
Oh, okay.
Well, this is basically something that's still being determined by neuroscience about exactly what mechanisms we use for this, but it's our sense of time passing. It's how we have an idea that time has elapsed. That is a unique sense. So there are also senses that are found in the animal world that are exclusive to other creatures and not human beings. So there's one that's called electroception, which I love the name of.
That's a great name.
It is a great name. Great name for an electronic band. It's the ability to feel surrounding electrical fields. And there's a very famous animal that stars in a 1975 Steven Spielberg film that uses this sense.
Oh, E.T.
Jaws, Dave. It's a shark. Sharks do it. Sharks use this sense to detect prey and navigate their environments. And there's also magnetic reception.
And then they can phone home. Okay, then go ahead.
I'm getting a sense of something right now, a sense of annoyance. Anyway, magnetoreception, is a sense possessed by several mammals like bats in which they detect the Earth's magnetic field and they use it to navigate.
Interesting.
Okay, so here we are. So we've shown there are plenty of sensory inputs that humans have beyond the five. Why the lie?
It might be a little bit similar to the last thing when we were talking about the matters, states of matter.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, if they don't have that initial foundation, it might be difficult to kind of comprehend these additional things. Depending on how old you are, your education level, it might be difficult to comprehend.
I mean, these are more complex concepts, an idea of a sense of balance or being able to feel time passing. There's no correlation to an external physical organ. So, with your eyes, obviously you can show a child you use your eyes to see. You use your nose to smell. You can't point to anything to show kinesthesia because they're internal sensory organs. So, yes, it's a foundational idea. Now, unfortunately, this is something where, unlike the previous issue we talked about, educators tend to refer to these as the five senses, and maybe that's something educators need to stop doing and simply talk about five senses. But that's usually why, because it is foundationally used to teach children the idea and concepts of sensory organs.
I think they might have forgot another one, though.
Which is that? Sense of style?
That's
because you definitely have that.
Oh, thanks, Adam. You look pretty snazzy yourself.
Thank you.
But what I was going to say was that feeling you get when you leave the house and you know that you forgot your keys, that's definitely got to be a sense.
What would you name that sense?
Stupidity. No.
Stupioception?
Equilibrium.
Equilibrium. I like that.
I don't know. Anyways, all joking aside, very fascinating informations there, Adams.
Thank you. And we have two more to go through.
Two more.
That's counting. Okay, so
I'm here to learn.
Here is fact/myth number 3. Dogs are colorblind.
I'm going to say that is fiction because they can't see all colors like humans can. So I think that's not completely correct. Partially correct.
Yeah, and to your point, this is one of those entries where I think there's some truth and some myth behind it. Dogs do not see colors the same way human beings do, but they're not colorblind. Canine species, they can see in hues of blue and green primarily. And some species even have better vision than human beings in low light because of that. But basically, no, dogs are not colorblind. Not
Completely.
really by our definition of that.
Unless we had dog eyes, how do we know?
Well, Dave, I want to volunteer you for a special surgery. We'll talk about that later.
Woof.
Down boy. So why do you think dogs only see with these muted hues of green and blue?
Well, they're different species.
And what's a physical attribute that humans have that allow us to see colors that's in our eyeball?
Our eyes are different. We have different things in our eyes than dogs do. I don't know how to explain that eloquently.
No, I mean, the basis of what you're saying is true. It's basically our receptors in our eyes are cones. So due to the lack of L cones that dogs have, they have trouble differentiating between red and orange and chartreuse. So very on the nose with that one. But basically, though they can do things like distinguish red and blue between the various shades, basically what happens is dogs, they are not able to make those same sort of differentiations. So they can detect different shades and whatnot, but they have a limited range of color palettes that they can see, and that's due to the lack of cones in their eyes.
And where are you getting this information?
So there's actually two sources because there's some other information I wanted to touch upon.
Yeah.
There was an article from a website called Dog Time, which of course is meant for dog owners and gives some interesting science behind canine friends as well. It was an article published on August 5th, 2023 titled, "Are Dogs Colorblind?" And there was also something I gathered from Scientific American that was published in October of 2023. It was an article titled, "What Colors Do Dogs See?" And this is a very fascinating read because it also got into why the idea has perpetuated over time. And why do you think there is the lie?
Again, I think this is all connected to what we've been talking about. It's maybe easier to explain that they're colorblind than to go into depth to say they only see certain colors.
Well, actually, this one's a little bit different from our
Ooh.
previous entries.
Okay, go ahead.
This one is more akin to what we talked about for Pluto, where the science behind it changed.
Okay.
There was an idea that was popularized in the 1940s. There was an optometrist named Gordon Walls, and he published a very famous and influential book called The Vertebrate Eye and Its Adaptive Radiation. And it claimed that dogs could only see colors weakly, if at all. However, this was debunked much further on in 1989 when an ophthalmologist named Jay Neitz of the University of California discovered that canines could see blues and yellows but not reds and greens. So very likely, this is a myth that's held over from instructors just repeating what they themselves were taught in school because as far back as 1989, this was accepted as scientific fact. Which, again, when we talk about making sure information literacy is imparted to your students, teach them to reread about information. Yes, even foundational concepts, sometimes we have to go back and revisit and see if those still hold water as truth.
And
So
you have another fact.
I have a final fact.
What's your FF?
I'll tell you my fantastic fourth fact.
Yes.
And this is something I think we were told a lot less in primary school, more in high school later on because, during that awkward phase of the ages between 11 and 33, we're all very, feeling self-conscious and very worried about this acne. So here's a fact/myth that might be true, might not be, and I'd like to get your input on it. This I definitely heard from educators, but was more from fellow students of mine.
Okay.
Eating chocolate gives you acne.
I don't think that's true.
Why not?
Because chocolate's delicious.
Everything delicious is good for you, right?
Yes. No.
I noticed that you keep eating that bag of cheesies right next to you.
I have no food. You're not allowed to have food in this
You were
room.
talking about eating cheesies after this, though.
I was not. But
That's also a myth.
but it's just, I don't know. Like, chocolate is, I know a lot of people like chocolate and it's delicious. But I was just thinking, I've never actually heard that.
You've never actually heard that.
No.
So, have you heard of that at all, but not just been told it by a teacher or a fellow student, or is this your first time hearing this at all?
I've never heard it from a teacher.
Okay.
But I've heard it, but not from a teacher, because we're talking about things you learn in school. I guess it could be any concept of school, whether you're in the building or at recess, or well, you don't have recess in high school, but
Well, I mean, you
they
have
call
break
it something.
period.
They call it skipping class. So when you skip class to eat chocolate, when did you find out it didn't cause acne?
Well, this one is a bit contentious.
Okay.
So I sourced this from two separate places.
Right.
An article from Forbes magazine published in 2017 titled, "Does Eating Sugar Really Cause Acne?" And also an article from Healthline published in March of 2018, "Does Chocolate Cause Acne?" by Mandy Ferreira.
Okay.
There's some evidence that sugar can exacerbate acne and can cause breakouts, but most doctors agree chocolate itself isn't the cause of breakouts.
Maybe if you rub it on your face.
I think if you rub most stuff on your face, it will irritate your skin. So, let go of that pile of cheesies that you have in your hand. But with that said,
the cheese dust is amazing.
well, Dave, as you dream about this, I'll explain to our listeners the science behind this. Basically, we have to look at the main culprit, which is not itself chocolate, but sugar. Sugar has an oxidative property that can provoke acne and breakouts. So basically, sugar in foods high on the glycemic index, so foods that quickly convert to glucose, lead to a burst of inflammation.
Okay.
And then can go throughout your entire body, including, obviously, your pores of your skin. Foods high in sugar and saturated fats, they increase the body's insulin levels that further exacerbate inflammation. So, steep insulin spikes will increase the production of skin oils and contribute to clogging of follicles, which will actually produce acne and pimples.
Okay.
Here's the thing. There are conflicting results from studies conducted as to whether chocolate causes acne or not, but usually that's because the products with chocolate are also paired with sugar. In these results, people who imbibe on large amounts of chocolate bars, cakes, and snack foods, they end up, yes, breaking out, but this is more attributed to the high level of sugars and processed fats that are in these rather than the chocolate itself, which is why normally you're going to see on market these like 80%, 90% chocolate bars, which will not cause people to break out because it's a higher content of chocolate and a smaller amount of the processed stuff, the fats, the sugars. So this is not a complete myth, but there is an element of this because treats like candy bars and cake do lead to skin problems, potentially because of the amount of sugar in them. So this is a thing where it's in between.
And you know what? A lot of people drink like sugary drinks, which will also contribute to that, I'm assuming.
And people also rub sugar on their face. I mean, don't do that, kids.
Yeah.
Don't rub that chocolate fondant on your face.
As good as it feels, it's going to cause problems.
Down the road, it will. That's the ultimate lesson to learn in school. Okay, we've gone through these 4 facts/myths, and we've determined 2 of them are not true. One of them is based on some truth, and one of them was based on what was considered truth at one point, but it has now been debunked. With this said, all this information and all the sources that I've discussed, you can find easily through many of our resources here at Windsor Public Library. You can even just go to our website, windsorpubliclibrary.com. We have great resources for articles that you can conduct research with, and e-magazines that you can access that feature all of these articles and more. But with that said, the question might, stem from this episode: why are educators lying to us? Why did they tell us these lies? And again, it's not necessarily lies. It was either the information was presented at one point as being factual, or it has to be presented to students in a certain way for it to be comprehended. And, it's a shame that oftentimes during these foundational lessons, maybe students will not progress in the curriculum to certain other courses and say the sciences to understand that, no, these were just foundational concepts. We have to build upon it. Even ideas of atoms being the smallest element at all, that's not true. You will actually break it down and you'll find there's other components of an atom itself. Again, these are all foundational concepts. As the pedagogy shifts to adapt to the best methods of teaching children, we're going to see probably more myths, quote unquote, come out. But with that said, if you have some of these things that you learned in school and you're shocked to learn they're not true, It's not out of any act of maliciousness from your instructor. No, it's simply because it was either having to be taught to you in a certain way for you to comprehend it, or because the science changed. Or maybe in the case of eating chocolate, it was just something where there was a correlation and people understood it as being a cause, but meanwhile, no, it's not that chocolate itself was bad, it was the products associated with chocolate that was the culprit. So when a teacher told you, you got to stop eating all those chocolate bars, you're going to break out, it's probably because they were right. The chocolate bar would cause you to break out, not because of the chocolate, but because of all the sugars and fat content in it.
Interesting.
Now, with that said, enjoy your chocolate bars, enjoy your cake. Don't feel any shame about it. With that said, Dave, we've gone through a lot of pedagogical facts and myths, but I see you have a sheet in front of you. Is that a calling of a school bell, or is that a random Dave fact?
I believe it's a random Dave fact, and you'll have to double check this because we may have said some of these, so I'm going to say about 3 because on the last couple episodes I read from this same page.
What if I'll give you a chance for 2?
Okay. Here's a fact. I'm just going to say it.
It's a fact. Perfect.
Wait, I'm going to ask you if this is a fact.
It's a fact.
This one is about, Adam, your favorite thing that I know you were going to hope that I asked you about.
Dinosaurs?
Actually, yes.
Oh, I love dinosaurs.
But it's about dinosaur poo.
I love dinosaurs. Anyway, what's...
The largest piece of fossilized dinosaur poo was discovered, and it was over 100 centimeters long and over 2 liters in volume. Is this fiction or nonfiction?
I believe the largest dinosaur excrement ever produced was Lost World Fallen Kingdom, so I'm going to say that's false.
Okay. Funny guy. So anyways, it's false.
You're right, it's Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Sorry, everyone.
It is false. I had the number wrong.
Oh, okay.
It is actually 30 centimeters long and over 2 liters in volume. Now, it's believed to be a Tyrannosaurus rex turd. The fossilized dung, also named a coprolite, is helping scientists better understand what the dinosaurs ate.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're wondering where I got this fact from, I have a very large collection, and I think there's like a lot on this site.
Facts of feces?
Sciencefocus.com.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to read another one for you.
Another feces fact?
This one does not involve excrement.
Oh, okay.
Snails have teeth. True or false?
Snails
Fiction
have...
or nonfiction?
Well, snails have ridges, basically kind of these follicles that allow them to grip onto things, but they're not teeth in the sense that they're not containing calcium.
How dare you know that?
Yeah.
Okay. They do have teeth, but yes, they're not like ours. So they have between 1,000 and 12,000 teeth, but to be precise, they're not like ours, as you mentioned. So they're not going to be having a big toothy grin, smiling at you from the distance.
You just gave me a horrifying mental image. Thank you
You'll
so
find,
much.
Yes, you'll find.
Maybe that will be the image for this episode. I don't know.
You'll find that the snail's tiny teeth are all over its file-like tongue.
Look, Dave, I don't want to say you're a liar, but how can that be if a snail doesn't have a hand to use a toothbrush?
I don't know. It just dunks its tongue in the water. I don't know.
Is that also how you brush your teeth?
Yes, because I have teeth on my tongue. That makes no sense, Adam. Okay, one more in case those facts were already used.
They were not, but that's great.
Okay, last fact.
Yes.
The sun makes a sound, but we can't hear it. Is this fiction or nonfiction?
Well, you don't hear anything in space, right?
Because in space, no one can hear you scream?
Well, then how can you hear a sound if it does that?
Okay,
Also,
if
a tree falls in the woods, will it make a sound?
Okay, I'm not getting into
because
this.
No one's
I'm
there
asking
around
you
to
about
hear
the
it.
sun. Fiction or nonfiction, the sun makes a sound.
Okay, in the terms of, does it send off any sort of wave of, like an audio wave, basically, that if there was some sort of device or organ to hear it, would it be able to hear? I'm going to say no.
Okay, you are wrong. The sun does, in fact, make a sound, but I'm going to explain. It makes sound, as you mentioned, in pressure waves. It makes a sound, but the wavelength and the pressure of the waves from the sun is measured in hundreds of miles, and they are far beyond the range of human hearing. So technically, it does make a sound, but we can't technically hear it. It's kind of like a giant dog whistle of fire. Okay, and that's my random day fact for this edition of
fiction
or nonfiction.
Well, Dave, that has been great. Listeners, as always, if you have any questions, you can always shoot us a message. And if you have any comments about the episode, please let us know. Of course, you can always leave your comments on YouTube or on Spotify, where we end up posting these episodes. And we're going to be back in a few weeks with some more. But with that said, that's done. Again, this has been Fiction
Or nonfiction.